The best examples is the opening scene to Inglourious Bastards. So here is the premise. A French farmer gets a visit from the German, Colonel Lander. The reason for his visit is left a mystery for the first couple minutes, when finally it is revealed.
I've heard that the Führer has put you in charge of rounding up the Jews left in France. Why are they hiding or passing for Gentile?
So for the next few minutes they have a conversation with a small uneasiness, but in the middle of that conversation, the truth is finally revealed. The Jewish family he is hunting is hiding beneath the floorboards. From this moment on, the dread builds like a snowball rolling down a hill. The farmer reveals that a squad of Germans already searched his house months ago, then Lander goes off on a tangent about animals and how they are, in his opinion, related to humans.
If one were to determine what attribute the German people share with a beast, it would be the cunning and the predatory instinct of a hawk. But if one were to determine what attributes the Jews share with the beast, it would be that of the rat.
Tarantino takes his time, going on tangents, being extra sure not to rush the next few moments. All the while, the viewer doesn't really know where Lander's analogy is going, until he finally says this.
A German soldier conducts a search of a house suspected of hiding Jews. Where does the hawk look? He looks in the barn, he looks in the attic, he looks everywhere he would hide. But there's so many places it would never occur to a hawk to hide.
The audience remembers about the German squad who searched the house and couldn't find anything, and then they make the connection. Lander is saying that the Germans did not know what they were doing, and did not check the house properly. This, by the way, is a good example of well done subtext, and then the viewer's stomach sinks as they realise exactly what Lander is implying. And it seems very possible he suspects the Jewish family is in fact inside the house, and then after some small talk, a silence takes the room.
You're sheltering enemies of the state, are you not?
Yes.
You're sheltering them underneath your floorboards, aren't you?
And then the terrible conclusion that the audience suspected might happen at the start of the scene has become a certainty. This is fantastic suspense, and there are a lot of lessons to be learned just from looking at this scene alone. Near the start of the scene, the audience is informed of the officer's mission, and the fact his targets are beneath the floorboards. As the audience has been given the information, they can piece together that the characters have the potential to collide with devastating consequence for the French farmer and the Jews hiding beneath the floor. What's interesting to note about this scene is how the tension in this scene does not stagnate. It is constantly building. And how exactly does the tension build? Well, the moment the audience learns the information about Lander's mission and the people hiding below, that possibility that they will collide with one another enters the viewer's head. As the tension in the scene builds, so does the possibility that the terrible eventuality will become reality. The scene gradually progresses from it being possible that Lander will find and kill the Jews to it being absolutely certain that that will happen. That is the source for the entirety of the suspense in this scene. And that's the thing. The serious majority of writers simply cannot create tension in the way Tarantino does because they are so very often in a rush. The characters say all their lines efficiently and purposefully so that the viewer can move on to the next scene as quickly as possible. And I will confess it's a failure in dialogue that I as a writer constantly stumble into. You cannot have a strong, long, palpable tension in a conversation when that conversation is over in less than 30 seconds. But if you do what Tarantino does, establish the goals of the two characters where they have the potential to collide with devastating conflict, and then you, over the course of a 5-minute conversation, peel back the layers as the audience slowly puts the pieces together, and after each and every piece is put forth on the screen, the tension only grows stronger as the viewer gradually realises that that horrible outcome they initially suspected is becoming more and more certain, until what feels like after an unbearably lengthy dread, it finally culminates in the worst possible scenario. This approach makes not just for good dialogue, but great cinema as a whole, and I think another good example of Tarantino creating suspense is later on in the same movie, where there is a British spy and an SS officer sitting at a table, and there is a long, drawn-out sequence where the officer is suspicious of his German accent, and later on in that scene, the spy says this.
3 Gläser.
And then the officer makes this expression. At a first viewing, this expression means nothing, and when the shooting starts 60 seconds later, it is almost a moment of shock. Only in the next scene is it revealed the subtle manner in which he gave away the fact that he wasn't German due to his hand gestures.
He ordered 3 glasses. We order 3 glasses. That's the German 3.
So on a second viewing, as the viewer knows the tell and the way in which the spy gives himself up, that expression the officer pulls has a totally different meaning to the first viewing, as the viewer knows that the officer has just realised that he is a spy. As Alfred Hitchcock once said,
"The essential fact is, to get real suspense, you must let the audience have information." Now let's take the old-fashioned bomb theory. You and I are sitting talking, we'll say, about baseball. We're talking for 5 minutes. Suddenly a bomb goes off and the audience have a 10-second terrible shock. Now, let's take the same situation. Tell the audience at the beginning that under the table and show it to them. There's a bomb and it's going to go off in 5 minutes. And we talk baseball. What are the audience doing? They're saying, don't talk about baseball. There's a bomb under there.
Now, giving the audience the correct amount of information and turning that scene into a suspenseful one, now that's good filmmaking. But writing it in a way where on the first viewing it is a moment of shock, and on the second it is a scene of suspense. Now that's downright genius filmmaking. But ultimately, the climax of the conflict, the moment where the argument is lost or the character is killed, that isn't the moment that is the most interesting part. But rather, the most interesting parts when the climax of that conflict is impending. It's for this reason I imagine that Tarantino could direct an exceptionally good horror film, as he is a master at building and milking that big release of tension. Tarantino is a master at storytelling, and I know a lot of you guys who watch this channel, just like me, aspire to one day make your own movies and write your own stories, which is a very admirable goal. However, it's hard. It is hard to write a good story or make a good film, especially without the proper knowledge on how to do it. Even for veterans in the field, there is always something more to learn. And when it comes to increasing your knowledge and honing down your craft,